Hello and welcome to Good or Bad. It's Halloween 2! That would technically be 4. It's Halloween 2. Previously on Halloween, Michael Myers breaks out of Smith's Grove Sanitarium, steals a car which he somehow knows how to drive. He returns home to Haddonfield to murder his only living relative, Laurie Strode. But shh, we don't know this yet. He repeatedly fails at his only objective. It's all very embarrassing. I bet his face is burning red under that mask. When he is finally about to kill her, his doctor fills him full of bullets and sends him flying out of a window. But Michael disappears almost instantly. Hey, it's either I read it all out to you like that or you watch the last 5 minutes of the first movie again. And don't say that's more entertaining than this. Halloween 2 was directed by Rick Rosenthal and released in 1981, 3 years after the original. Which makes me think, was there always going to be a sequel? Because slasher films started to become annual releases, so waiting 3 years for a follow-up seems like it wasn't intended from the start. But anyway, this movie picks up immediately where the last left off, with Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence returning as Laurie Strode and Dr. Sam Loomis. Laurie has been taken to hospital after suffering several injuries during her encounter with Michael. Meanwhile, Loomis is going hysterical over the fact that he shot Michael 6 times and he is still alive.
Is this some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
I love that line. It really is the small things in life that get you. Loomis searches for Michael throughout the streets of Haddonfield, alongside Sheriff Brackett, played by yet another returning cast member, Charles Cyphers. Whilst Michael recovers by wandering around the town and picking up a knife. He decides not to kill this woman, whom he stole the knife from, but when he bumps into this one, he guts her. Which means Michael doesn't want to kill literally anything that moves, it just seems to be younger women and anyone that gets in his way. And some people have said that is because younger women remind him of his sister Judith, and they may not be far wrong. Maybe he just wants to relive the night he killed Judith over and over again. While searching for Michael, Loomis and the sheriff spot a man wearing a mask and try to confirm whether it's him or not. Loomis lets his fear take over and tries to shoot first and ask questions later, but Brackett stops him. The guy is trying to walk away from them, but then the backup they call smashes into him and burns him to a crisp. We all know it isn't Michael. It is, in fact, a drunk teenager on his way home from a party who just so happens to be Ben Tramer, the guy that Laurie had a crush on in the first film. Who he is isn't really important, but it's a nice reference to a throwaway line in the first movie where Annie and Laurie are talking about crushes. And the fact that he is drunk helps maintain a nice flow of events between films, because Annie told Laurie that he went out drinking with the guys. Later on in the movie they do find out it's this Tramer kid, so the search is back on. But Sheriff Brackett stands down when he finds out one of the victims from the first movie was his daughter Annie.
The teenager was taken across town to Haddonfield Memorial Clinic.
The story is all over the news, and when Michael overhears that they took Laurie to the hospital, he heads straight there. Laurie is recovering in a hospital bed while one of the paramedics, Jimmy, played by Lance Guest, tries to comfort her. He tells her who it was that attacked her, and she remembers the name Michael Myers, presumably from all the stories of the boy that killed his sister all those years ago.
Why me?
Oh, you'll find out soon, and trust me, you're gonna hate it. Looks like the phones aren't working, which can only mean one thing. Death has come to your hospital. And bodies do indeed start dropping, starting with the security guard who is checking out why the phones aren't working. Then the couple who are playing doctors and nurses gets killed off, and then another nurse bites the dust. What was that? Why am I summing up several deaths at once? Well, if the movie's not going to bother to develop any of these characters, why should I bother to remember their names? Wow. I could say that for so many movies. Now, to be fair, the deaths themselves aren't half bad. I would even go as far to say they are much better than the deaths that we got in the first movie. But the first film fleshed out several of its characters. The only characters developed in this film are the ones that were already built up from the last movie, so they don't count. All the new characters in this movie are just lambs for the slaughter. The closest we get is Jimmy, but he doesn't get that much screen time. Loomis and the gang get wind of a break-in at an elementary school, so they go to investigate. They find pictures with knives in them, with Sam Hain scrawled across the blackboard. I'm guessing Michael had some time to kill before he found out Laurie was being taken to the hospital. The drawings are of a family with the knife in the daughter, which Loomis immediately realises means Michael's sister. Loomis, however, believes it is a drawing of his older sister Judith, when in reality Michael was picturing Laurie's death. I have to say, the idea of Michael Myers sat at a child's school desk drawing pictures with crayon is pretty funny. Loomis gets an unexpected visitor. One of his colleagues has come to collect him and bring him back to Smith's Grove. He tells her he cannot leave Haddonfield until Michael is stopped, but she brought a marshal with her, so he doesn't really have a choice. And why do they want him to leave? Well, it is simple, really. They are embarrassed. They let Michael escape, and now they look bad, so they want to distance themselves from it, which means getting Loomis away from it all. But back at the hospital, Laurie isn't taking any chances after finding out the phones don't work, so she flees from her room and takes refuge elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jimmy makes a discovery. He finds one of the nurses dead and, well, that's about it, really. Well, this movie is definitely gorier than the first. Which you may think is because John Carpenter didn't direct. Instead, it was Rick Rosenthal. A change in director would definitely help explain why the movie is leaning heavier towards more brutal deaths and nudity as well. In other words, more like its competitors. But it wasn't Rick Rosenthal's doing at all. He wanted to continue Carpenter's suspense-driven story techniques. In actual fact, it was John Carpenter that dictated, as he was still serving as producer and writer, that the movie wouldn't compete very well in the box office without including more gore and sex. Seriously, fuck this movie, and indeed the genre, for making me say gore and sex in the same sentence. But I digress. Michael runs amok throughout the hospital by chasing and killing the very, very few people that are there. What hospital has one patient and barely any staff? I know Haddonfield is a quiet town, but that's just taking the piss. Laurie yet again runs for her life, while Loomis learns a few secrets. Apparently there was a file on Michael that no one has seen. She tells him that Laurie is Michael's younger sister, and that the file was sealed in order to protect Laurie's adopted family. And they also casually mention that Michael's parents died 2 years after he got committed. Yeah, they weren't checking her for questions left after the first movie sheet at all, were they?
Jesus, don't you see what he's doing here in Haddonfield? He killed one sister 15 years ago, now he's trying to kill the other.
Okay, so Loomis forces the marshal to take him to the hospital so they can try to stop Myers. You know, I do wonder whether I would have been surprised, because as far back as I can remember, I've always known that they were brother and sister. Maybe somebody spoiled it before I ever watched them. It's so long ago I can't remember. So I will just say this. I curse you, unknown, possibly non-existent person. I curse you. Laurie managed to escape Michael for a while, and has hidden herself in a car, but then Jimmy turns up and gets in the car and is acting all dazed and confused. Well, it was a nasty fall. I have to say, he is remarkably clean considering he fell into a pool of blood. I know it's dark, but you'd think we would see some on him. That can't be good. Because of all the noise, Laurie crawls out of the car to try and find somewhere else to hide. Talk about timing! Come on then, speak up! You know those moments in movies that just make you go... That was one of them. Michael has found her and she sums forth the power of movement and making lots of noise. So they open the door and let her in. Really? He can walk through that door, but a closet gave him that much trouble? Loomis once more fills him full of lead. He then comforts Laurie while telling the marshal to keep his distance from Michael, and sends woman who has been in the movie for like 5 minutes, so I don't really care to remember her name, to go get help. The Marshal refuses to stay away from Michael's body, which means he bites it. Loomis and Laurie run to the climax of the movie, which involves some pretty impressive shooting. Oh, that's brilliant! Not only did she manage to shoot him directly in both eyes with zero training on how to use that weapon, but he didn't even fall to the ground. Well, I guess it takes a minimum of 6 shots to do that. But he is blinded now, so Loomis and Laurie fill the room with gas. Laurie runs for her life and Loomis ends it once and for all.
It's time, Michael.
Both Michael Myers and Sam Loomis are now dead, and their obsessions along with, and Laurie gets to live out the rest of her life free from her murderous brother. The end. Right? Well, it should be, but it clearly isn't. So Halloween 2. Was it as good as the first film? Did it shed some light on the mysteries left from the last movie? Are we satisfied? Mostly? Don't get me wrong, this is not as good as the first movie, but it's not really much worse either. Michael Myers is still as creepy as he was in the first film, Loomis just as intense, and as for Laurie, hell, you just feel sorry for her. Finding out he is her brother would certainly be a little, very jarring. Well, I say she finds out, but does she? She has some dreams that definitely point her in that direction, but it feels like they were teasing it for the audience, not for the character. The movie never clearly states that she does find out, but at least we did. The new characters were kind of dull. Jimmy had some potential, but as I said earlier, he was barely in the film. I mean, we saw so little of him, we don't even know whether he survived. The last we saw of him, he was passing out in his car. Either that or he just succumbed to his head injury and died, we just don't know. Overall, I really enjoyed it. The music is still very good, and it has just enough suspense to keep it going while not entirely measuring up to the original. You have been watching Good or Bad, and I'll see you next time.